Okay.
What's the name of your channel?
Pajama Audits.
And what
I
do you do?
I wear pajamas and I go and I videotape our public officials. My motto is pajamas because our government isn't worth getting dressed for. I'm very, it was a way to bring out what I was doing, to be different from the other activists that were out there. And it just fit because I'm sick. I have a disease and I live in pajamas anyway. So it made sense.
What kind of disease?
I have an autoimmune disease that segmented my spinal cord. And it left me on hospice, which is how my activism began.
You began in hospital?
I was on hospice care, and I was attempting to get my daughter enrolled into the public school system. And they were refusing to let me enroll her unless I went in there. And 5 months it took me to get my daughter enrolled in the school system. And that was after, I got even sicker. And at that point, I had to have her in school. I couldn't do it at home anymore. It took me going to the school board, and that's when I started fighting. It was in 2018. I started fighting the school district at that point. And we got my daughter enrolled, and it was in April of 2018 that my daughter came home and disclosed that she had been sexually assaulted at school, on school campus. So that's how my activism all started.
And what were you trying to do?
I was trying to bring out the issues that, when my daughter went to the student resource deputy and the principal, she came home and changed her story. We had heard that from other people as well, that was happening. My daughter was in counseling. She had, we had help with her because she is disabled. And I was just trying to bring it out that, you guys need to look at this. And I went to the school board, and I went to the administration, and I went to my school board member. In October of 2018, I worked at the polling booths for 12 hours a day, every day for 10 days, to get a new school board member put in place because they weren't addressing the issues. So when they say just elect them out, that's not the answer. Because what happens is you bring in new people. Like he was elected. He got 50 votes over the previous school board member. So he won. And he hasn't been able to make changes either. Because it's so deep and it's so rooted in the district that it's just, we have people coming forward now with what's going on.
Where is this again?
In Volusia County, Florida. We're about 20, it's Daytona Beach area, and I'm about 25 minutes south of Daytona, southwest of Daytona.
And that's where you started doing your auditing?
Yes, yeah. It started with, just kind of helping out another group of activists with the city attorney thing, or the city manager thing. We had a corrupt city manager who was charged with 6 counts of felony voter fraud, and I assisted in that investigation and getting that going. And she was, she took a DPA, but she pled guilty to 6 counts of felony voter fraud. So that's how it started. That and me looking at the sheriff as well, and noticing some things that were concerning.
How did they respond to you show up in pajamas?
They make fun of me. They laugh at me, and I just look at them and I go, "But you're not worth getting dressed for." If you guys were worth getting dressed for, I definitely, show up. Go home and get dressed. Okay, I am dressed. I'm covered. I had one guy say, "Look at, you're in pajamas." I said, "Yeah, look at your pants are hanging down. Pull them up." It's like, who cares? But yeah, it's.
What did it feel like going to a place like that in pajamas?
I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with it. It makes people wonder why I'm dressed that way. We did have Eric, actually the first time that Volusia County was introduced to Eric was I went to the sheriff's department to pick up some documents, and then from a public records request. And when I walked in, the lady, her name was Brenda, she was so nasty. And she's like, you shouldn't be allowed to record us, and you shouldn't have that right, and da 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 da. She was going off on me. And that opened the door for Eric to be introduced to Volusia County because he was on my live feed and he called them. And she was like, I'm not dealing with these clowns, and slammed the phone down and got up and walked away. But, you know, they had multiple calls coming in. But Eric, you know, he's very vocal. So they were like, crap, you know.
Is that what happens? Like everyone just starts calling and live streaming when you're in this community?
Not necessarily. I know a lot of people do static and then they upload it afterwards. Me, because I go alone, I tend to go for the live feed. I don't want to take a chance. And if anything happens, then yeah, we can call. Call flooding, we noticed that it was helping at first, but then everybody kind of expected it. So they started kind of easing up on that. And then there was a question at one point whether or not the call floods were actually a criminal offense because we were tying up the phone lines. And, you know, so we finally said, okay, don't call, do not call. So that was something that we really enjoyed, you know. We enjoy supporting each other, and that's anything I have to say about this community is the number one important thing is the support. I came all the way from Florida to be here for tomorrow.
Why?
Because I love Eric and I love this community. In my own activism, I had to leave the day that they had gotten out of school in 2019. My kids got out of school on May 30th, and that day a man showed up to pick up my daughter. Didn't even know her, walked up and said, "Are you?" And I said, "Who are you?" Walked right up my driveway onto my porch. He goes, "I'm here for her." I said, "Oh, hell no, you're not." I said, "And I know who you are, you need to leave." He was one of the adult men who were soliciting minors for sexual images over Instagram and Snapchat. I finally recognized him, like I just, that one glance when you finally...
He showed up at your house?
Yes, sir.
Daughter?
Yes, sir. That was the third attempt. His name is Ryan.
And he just showed up and tried to take her.
Yep. And I called 911 and they found 2 phones full of child pornography on them. And then he said that he didn't have an ID and he was only 15, but he had supposedly driven from Texas to Florida to pick my daughter up. And if I showed you a picture of this man, you would laugh and say, there's no way he's only 15. He's not 15. So they let him go. They took the phones and let him go. And I left Florida and I came here. Eric had multiple times called me and said, "PJ, I'm scared for you. I'm scared they are going to kill you because of what I uncovered in my county." He said, "They're going to kill you." So when Ryan showed up at my house to get my daughter, I was terrified because now I know they know where I live. So I packed my kids up and we came here. We were accepted into the community. We were given a place to stay. We were fed. We were cared for. We were supported. Eric taught me so much. I learned so much. I went on audits and protests with them. I saw the Denver police swoop in and take one of the community members just real quick. It was literally like a kidnapping. They swooped in, they grabbed him, they closed the door, unmarked police vehicle. And I'm like, oh my God, that was Liberty Freak TV. I'm like, oh my God, you know. I didn't realize how bad the police community was. Honestly, I was one of those people who said, if you follow the law, you don't have anything to worry about. If they arrested you, they had a reason to arrest you. And when I saw that, I knew I was wrong. It was like a slap in the face. I knew. So I came here. After I was here and we knew that we were safe, we drove to California. The rest of the way we went to California, and I met with FBI agents in California. I turned over all the evidence of both the human trafficking and the sexual assaults at the school.
So, Otto is pretty, sorry, use his name so we know.
Eric became a huge supporter of me. I don't remember the exact day. It was close to the day that the incident at the sheriff's department happened, and somebody asked if they could give Eric my number, and I said yes, of course, And he called me, and we talked a lot, and he did. He told me, Eric told me the best advice that I can give you, PJ, is record. And that has saved my reputation. It saved me from a lot of accusations. And anytime I got into a pickle, it just seemed like Eric was there. If I didn't know what to do, Eric was on my live feed. And if I wasn't reading the comments, he would call me or text me and say, hey, you need to do this. You need to ask this. And he helped me to become the activist that I needed to be to go against these people. Eric has always stood by me and supported me. And
so you have a different, people try to characterize him as some sort of, violent guy or who's threatening judges, but you have a totally different.
I do.
Are they wrong?
They are. They are very wrong. Eric, when I first saw Eric, I thought, oh my God, this guy's loony. I was introduced to him by James Freeman. James had posted on his page, he goes, you guys need to go look at this page, go watch this guy's videos. And I went, oh my God, this guy's psycho, he's fucking crazy. But I kept watching him. It was like he drew me in, and I just kept watching him. And when I brought my kids here, because I brought all 4 of my younger children, my oldest stayed home, and I brought my teenager and my younger ones. And when I saw Eric with my kids, I was like, he was laying on the floor playing baby dolls with my 3-year-old. I'm like, this man is not violent at all. You hear what people say about him. You hear people say, oh, you don't want him coming to your community because, shit's going to happen. No, that's not. Okay, if sidewalk chalk was dangerous, sure, at that point. But yeah, he's a very important part of my life, and I care about him deeply. I know that he would never hurt anybody like that. He doesn't have it in him. He wants to see change, which is exactly why most of us get into this, because we don't want to see people get hurt.
And do you feel like, how do you feel about the sentencing? Are you worried?
Yes.
What are you worried about?
Honestly, I'm worried about losing my friend. I'm worried about them putting him in prison for up to 18 years. When all he did was use words. He didn't tell people to go do this. It was a blanket statement. I watched those videos. And I don't want to see him lose the ability to speak freely, because that affects all of us. It affects the entire community. If we get put away for using our First Amendment right of free speech, especially with what's going on. The police always say, in the world we live in today. Well, yeah, how do you think we feel? Every time I see a deputy pull up next to me or I pass a deputy, my heart literally skips beats, because I know what they're capable of. I've seen it. So it's just, it affects our whole community, and I don't want Eric to be gone. My little girl is, she's Eric's #1 fan, and he was on a video call with somebody from the jail one time when he was arrested, and I was watching it, and I tried not to show those to her, but she came in and climbed up on the bed, and she goes, "That's mine, Eric." And I said, "Yes, that's your Eric." And she goes, "Let me see, I want to see mine, Eric." And she turned the phone, and she started crying. And she's like, "Mommy, is Eric in jail?" And I said, "Yes, honey, Eric's in jail." And she goes, "Why did those mean people put my Eric in jail?" And even at 5 years old, she's 5 now, even at 5 years old, she understands that he's going to jail for using words. And she's, that breaks my heart because she loves Eric. When she found out, she told Eric I was coming. This was supposed to be a surprise.
You have what?
This was supposed to be a surprise, me being here. And she called Eric and told Eric that I was coming. So, yeah. So, yeah, he's an important part of my family. All my family, even those who haven't met him yet, are supportive of him. So
if you wanted to tell people one thing about Eric, what would you want to say to them if they didn't know him?
he's a big teddy bear. I know people think he's out there, and I know people think that he's obnoxious, and I've heard it all. But he's not. His heart is so big for every single person that he advocates for. Whether it's the homeless or people that are victims of police brutality, or even the activists who are out there getting, like with me, what I'm exposing. And Eric has covered my story a couple times, and he helped me to get a new attorney because my attorney was not working for me. And he's there for everybody. And he doesn't deserve to go sit in a jail cell. He doesn't.
All right.
That was
Good.
that
You're
was
amazing.
great.
You're amazing.
That was really great.